Welcome, Christian Warriors. Hey, we got a active shooter that was averted by some really quick thinking church staff. They did a wonderful job, and I want to bring that to you. Look, there's a ton of you that are coming back to the channel, but don't subscribe. If that's you, hit the subscribe button because it helps me get more exposure on YouTube and bring these incidents to light so we can hopefully stop something in the future. And then you can always go to christianwarriortraining.com. I put out multiple newsletters every week. I don't spam you. I just put out really good intelligence and training information for church security teams. Even if you're not a believer, you're welcome to come subscribe and to come to this channel. I do great self-defense information. I'm a 30-year cop and a 20-year SWAT veteran. I'm now retired, living the good life in Idaho. So come join me, hit that subscribe button. All right, so with every incident, we talk about what happened, and then we break down what you could do to avert something like this if it happened at your church. So this happened. I'm gonna get the name of the church wrong. Manantial de Vida Church, and this is in Naples, Florida. It was averted on Sunday thanks to some quick thinking church staff and a fast and decisive response from the Collier County Sheriff's Office. Now, while the situation ended peacefully, it is a reminder of how close evil can come to a church and why churches have to be spiritually and tactically prepared. Now, this happened at 12:30 when a man later identified as 23-year-old Angel Antonio Araguin entered the church lobby during the final moments of the Sunday service. Now, two church employees encountered him, probably because he looked suspicious and they thought they should probably go talk to him. And they immediately noticed some disturbing behavior from him. Araguin claimed to be a trained killer, FBI clue number one, and asked how much money it would take to stop a mass shooting, FBI clue number two. And he appeared to have a handgun in his waistband. Strike three. So rather than panic, the church staff acted with calm under pressure. One staff member attempted to de-escalate while another discreetly moved children to safety. Now, law enforcement was contacted immediately, and he was found with a loaded handgun, a round in the chamber, and 3 fully loaded magazines, and 60 rounds of 9mm ammunition. Now, most of the congregation didn't know how close they came to a disaster if that quick thinking staff had not intervened. Pastoral staff ended the service early and quietly and directed members out through side exits. Now, Araguin was arrested and charged with 2 felony counts of threat to discharge a destructive device and disorderly conduct. Now, he was also placed under the Baker Act, which, if you guys don't know what a Baker Act is, it's when somebody is a danger to themselves or others or gravely disabled. Law enforcement can take them in on a 72-hour hold. Some of you might have heard the term 5150. That comes from my home state, California, where it's just a welfare and institutions code that allows us to take people into protective custody. Now, here, he was a danger to others, obviously, and that's probably what they took him under. And he was also banned from ever returning to the church, which is important. Just before we get into what you can do, but you do want to make sure you do a restraining order to keep them from ever coming back. And the reason why you're doing that is you're protecting your church safety team in case he does come back and you do have to use some type of force because of what's going on. It's just a layer of protection for your church safety teams. If there is, God forbid, a shooting or some other incident later on, and you just have a nice foundation with that restraining order. All right, so we have to give some good commendations to the staff. They did a wonderful job, and not many other people may handle it that well under stress. So to reiterate, while one person kept them busy talking, another left, evacuated children, and then they ended the service early and evacuated people out other doors to keep them safe. So if something did happen, casualties are minimal. So really good job to you guys. But it also does raise other questions for churches. What if deputies hadn't arrived in time? What if the suspect has pulled his weapon during that conversation? Would your team be ready to act decisively like this team acted? So for me, I can tell you if it was me, I would have disarmed him immediately. I have training. And so this is where we really have to talk about what separates your team from just a bunch of guys that have concealed carry permits to a team that is ready for anything. Everybody trains for the active shooter. The guy comes in and starts shooting. But there are so many things in between that can happen. And you have to ask yourself, what training have you done to prepare yourself for that stuff that's in between? You're more likely to have a sexual assault in your church than you are to have an active shooter, statistically. But I see people working so hard on an event that may not happen. Here, I think it's important to have a whole bunch of different training. Here, this de-escalation that this team used worked, and good for them. That was awesome. But you also have to prepare in case, because remember, de-escalation is a two-way street. If the other person doesn't want to de-escalate, then de-escalation isn't going to happen. It takes two. And so if he doesn't want to de-escalate and he pulls that handgun, are you ready for that? I can tell you, if you're going to do this Mexican standoff and then draw at the same time, you might lose. depending on how much you train. Sometimes it might be quicker to grab the firearm and disarm them than it is to try and pull your gun and then get into this shootout. So you have to train for all those eventualities. So what does your team train for? I've mentioned it before on this channel that your team should be training 4 hours every month at a minimum. It would be great if you could do more, but 4 hours should be your minimum. Split that up amongst everything: active shooter, range training, de-escalation, dealing with mentally disturbed persons. If you cover all of that, you'll be ready for anything that comes across. Now, with my training, I got 30 years as a cop. So for me, I've encountered people like this that have been armed. I've always disarmed them right away. But if you don't have that training, then don't jump into that, because then you're going to get hurt and you're probably going to ignite some kind of a shootout. But you have to constantly be thinking, what happens if he goes for the gun? Kind of a low-level way of handling these issues, if you could keep them talking by asking open-ended questions. If you watch a trained hostage negotiator, they never say, these very, answer really quick questions. What's your name? What's your date of birth? Like these, something that it would be like, hey, what's wrong today? What happened today? Open-ended question. And they'll say, my wife left me. Well, tell me about that. What, your wife left you. How long have you been married? 24 years. Kind of a quick question they can answer. Okay, 24 years. Why'd she leave you? Can we talk about that? Keep asking these open-ended questions where they have to keep talking, because if they're talking, the thoughts in their head can't take over and have them do something harmful to you, right? Now look, for all my retired cops that are watching, current cops, there are a ton of you. Use your training. You're going to disarm them. And a lot of people are going to say, well, in Idaho, we have constitutional carry. He didn't commit a crime. Okay, but you got a guy coming in with an obvious handgun in his waistband, saying he's a trained killer, and how much money is it going to take to stop a mass shooting? Okay, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out where this is going, okay? He's on private property. You can make a lot of demands of people, okay? When I deal with mentally disturbed people and they start doing the I'm a trained killer, which that comes up a lot with mentally unstable people. I don't know why. Or I'm a Navy SEAL or whatever. I always ask them, hey, do you have a firearm on you right now? And they will usually answer truthfully. So you do want to find that out and ask those if you don't have that training though. You haven't had law enforcement training. I was in the military. We didn't really get training on disarming people like in a situation like this. And let it go. Don't try and disarm them because you're going to make it worse. Ask those open-ended questions. Ask those questions again. So you're a trained killer. Where did you get your training? And what kind of training does it take to become a trained killer? Well, it's funny you brought up mass shootings. Why would you bring that up today? Are you thinking about doing a mass shooting here? And then hear what they have to say. And then sometimes, like, you'll hear them pause and look up and say, do you hear a voice? And they will say yes. Don't ever say, I don't hear it. Just say, oh, I believe that you hear that. What's it saying to you? For churches, a lot of them will say that God is talking to them. The best response I ever got was from a very nice lady who's no longer with us. She worked with indigent people, and I brought this up to her that was a common thing they asked. Like when I saw mentally unstable people at my church, and they were saying God told them to do whatever. And she brought up a great point. Is it God telling you to do this, or is it the voices in your head pretending to be God telling you to do these things? Have since had opportunity to use that, and it works really well. And I've had the one time I got to use it, it was, I think it might be the voices in my head pretending to be God. Okay, perfect. Well, let's talk about that. And then by that time, hopefully law enforcement shows up. They'll handcuff them, remove the firearm, and then you probably get trespassed, or there'll be, like what they did here with, a threatening, a weapons violation for, threatening people in a church or what have you. When you leave here, I just want to emphasize what you should do if you have a similar incident. Do what this church did, which is keep talking to them until police arrive, and then they can take them off. Ask those open-ended questions that keeps them talking. If you're in law enforcement, retired law enforcement, you have experience with this and training in this, go with your experience and training and go ahead and disarm them. That is entirely up to you. My recommendation to you, though, if you have no specific training in that, then don't do it, because somebody's going to get hurt. So really tough. What I would do from here is I would take this incident, put it into your reality-based training or your scenario training, and I would start rolling through that as a scenario and see how your people handle it. I can tell you most of my church's SOPs or standard operating procedures, how we handle these incidents, it comes from us taking incidents like this and then walking through it and then figure out what works best for our church and for our people. And we come up with some great SOPs out of that. So look, I want to commend this church. You guys did a wonderful job. If you go to this church and you're watching and you guys have video of this, I would love to get a copy of that so other people can learn from what you guys did. But I want you to pray for this young man that was taken under a psychiatric hold. I want you to pray that God heals him, and if he's possessed, that the Lord removes the demons from him, or that he is cured of his mental illness, whatever is going on with him. Pray for this church and pray that they continue to have great discernment like they had in this particular incident. Pray that the Lord gives you that same discernment so you can keep something from happening at your church. This is 2 weeks in a row now, or 2 out of 3 weeks, where we've had potential active shooters stop by church staff. And we're doing really good, but we have to be right 100% of the time. And that's really tough for us to keep going, all right? The other thing I want you to remember after you leave here, after you pray, I want you to remember your ABCs. Always be caring.